What's up, future fans? Welcome to the Back to the Future 2 reunion panel. Without any further ado, let's start bringing out our illustrious cast. We got up first, okay. We have, you know him from Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and as Data from Back to the Future 2 and 3, Ricky Dean Logan. Alright. And you know him also from Death Warrant, Big Bully, and it's Chuck's cousin, Marvin Berry, Back to the Future 1 and 2.
Marvin Berry! Marvin Berry! Harry Waters Jr., ladies and gentlemen.
Where do I sit? We'll stay standing so that we get
Stay standing.
Right? Cool. Come on, man. There's like people here.
And from Wally up, Monsters University, and Mayor Goldie Wilson, the first and the third in Back to the Future 1 and 2, Don Fullilove.
Yeah! Please vote for Mayor Goldie.
That side. We gotta split up. You can't be that good. Where do I sit? Right there.
Oh, I see. We're gonna Oreo.
It's really getting worse.
And we got one more for you from Pale Rider, Max Headroom, Saved by the Bell, and George McFly in Back to the Future 2 and 3, Jeffrey Weissman.
Jeffrey Weissman is here? Jeffrey Weissman is here! Back in the room!
Oh, there he is! Wow. Ham.
That guy know how to make an entrance or what?
Alright, I know you guys all got a lot of questions. We're going to alternate to keep you crazy fans from taking us off the rails. So I'll do a question, you guys do a question, I do a question, you do a question. So my first question is for Ricky Dean Logan. I know the fans are dying to know, we're 2 years too late. What is a bojo, my man?
Got a children?
You! No, I'm kidding. I'll tell you the story about that. That was kind of an ad-lib on my part, bojo. We were doing the scene, he was going across the water, and yeah, we had a lot of freedom to you know, Zemeckis was cool, as Don knows, and you know, and Donnie Zemeckis, he was in a boy band, like, no, come on, man. So Zemeckis let us do, kind of like really have a little bit of way, and Bob Gale, who wrote the script, was really cool about letting us deviate, and he wanted the characters, he wanted us to bring them alive. So stuff like that happens. You know, you're in the middle of a scene, you do 3 or 4 or 5 takes, and I just swimmed across the water. Those boards don't work on water, you bojo. And then my really good friend Jason's like, unless you got power. So it's really kind of osmosis as actors. When a good director lets us be ourselves, then they hire us to do what we do, which is really cool. And Zemeckis was definitely one of those guys.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to call Webster and tell him to call you, because you made up the word you should define in the dictionary. Bojo.
Oh, yeah!
You know, if you do that.
I had one of those moments too on the film because I was hanging upside down, you know, outside the McFly household in 2015, and Michael was playing Marlene, you know, my granddaughter, and they stuffed his orange hot pants to give him a butt. And so the way I was being hung, I was head level with his butt. And we were rehearsing, and you know, we were able to.
Upside down.
They were able to come up with things, and because his butt looked like a pumpkin, that line, "How's Granddad's little pumpkin," came from that.
That is a classic line. All right, so then, fan, anybody got a question out there I want to ask?
You're freaking me out, dude. You're freaking me out.
A lot of scary clowns here.
All right, if we didn't break the ice yet, then I could go for another one. Don, actually, my question is for you. I've read that your involvement in Back to the Future 2 kind of came about at the last minute. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, tell that story, brother.
Well, they offered me the role first.
So anyway, Back to the Future 2 was finished filming. It was done. It was over with. And for those of you who have seen Back to the Future 2, maybe 1 or 2 of you in here, you realize that Goldie Wilson III was Goldie Wilson's great-grandson or whatever. Well, there was no such thing. There was a guy in L.A., he has paint shop. His name is Earl Scheib, and his thing was,
$9.99.
I will paint any car for only $29,999, you know, or $39.99. So they played on that. Earl Scheib was supposed to have done that role, but he died. So when he died, they didn't know what to do. So Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis got together and they said, "Hey, let's make it Goldie Wilson III." And that's where I'm going to leave it. That's how it happened.
Story straight from the source. All right.
Straight from the source.
Straight from the source. All right. Speaking of straight from the source, I actually have a question for Harry. Ooh. I recently read that during the filming of one, and I was curious if you did this on two as well, but I read that you found a unique way to entertain the enchantment of the sea dance crowd in between takes.
Oh, the striptease.
Striptease.
Pay no attention to him. He's an improv comic and he can't help himself. Okay, no, because you're a band on stage at a prom and there's all these girls in their little prom dresses and that has to be your focus. So in order for me to keep my focus for camera, I need to have 8 girls every take, right, the same spot, every day at the same time, and it worked. They were very happy to be there. They were my own little groupies. Who knows that could happen? You could like ask people to be groupies and they just, yeah! Every day and all night long until 1 o'clock in the morning.
I know I should have got that role.
That's a studio movie problem. I don't think they have those problems on indies.
You gotta have the chords, Don.
All right, so my next question would be for Jeffrey then. Jeffrey, you have a short film that's going to be screening right after this, and you guys all better stick around for it. It's a great film. What can you tell us about your film, The Travel?
He'll probably tell you a lot more, but you know, we'll all find out more about it later when Jeffrey is talking about his film and being in his film, because we really like Jeffrey here. We're going to let him speak now.
Next question. The Traveler is more of a proof of concept. It's a pilot for a TV series. And I was asked to play a nefarious time traveler who's trying to lure his brainwashed ex-protege into helping him travel through time and take over a small country. And hopefully you'll get that from seeing it.
Is it rated R?
For rousing.
Okay. What small country? I'm just curious.
Which small country?
Yeah.
It's similar in name to a flower.
Okay, we'll have to see it. All right. I won't spoil it.
Well, speaking of short films, I think Ricky, you have a short film that's airing also right after Jeffrey's. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, actually, it's called Back to the 2015 Future, and I got together with a friend of mine that I've known for years, and we wrote this little piece. And I sent it to Bob Gale, the script, because I want to make sure to clear it with him, because there's a lot of things you can't do unless he clears things. And he read the script and he said, "Man, this is super funny." And then I just got everybody together, and actually Bob Gale, because this is the kind of guy he is, he actually got me to shoot on the back lot. We shot everything at the clock tower, shot everything at Doc's house, all the original locations. Michael's in it, Doc's in it. Fullilove is in it, and he's funnier than hell. Claudia Wells, Darlene Vogel, who was Spike in my hoverboard gang. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It's super fun. We did, and we made it strictly for the supporters. That was my whole thing. Nothing was sold. Nothing was. It was just for you guys. I wanted you guys to have something for the 30-year anniversary, and I hope you enjoy it, because I'm super proud of it, and I think it's super funny. So,
you guys better stick around after all that, or you're a bunch
please,
of mojos out there.
Because if you leave, no.
All right, so I have another question for Don. This is actually going deep in the history here. According to my research, your first role that I could find on IMDb.
Can I say it?
You want to say it?
Yeah. Anybody watch the Jackson 5 cartoon show?
There's no one in this room old enough.
Okay. So let me enlighten you. Let me introduce you to Mr. Michael Jackson. Who knew that? Who knew that? Nobody.
I'm probably the first Michael Jackson impersonator, yes.
Well, I wouldn't say impersonator, you know.
Well, it was impersonation. It was a cartoon show, so I was not playing him.
Okay, well, fair enough.
I can't sing or dance. Next question.
No, actually my question is, was it weird to see someone play Michael in part 2 in such a completely different way, obviously? You voiced him in a cartoon from when he was a young kid with his brothers, and now here's like the 80s icon Michael and in the Max Headroom kind of video waiter role there.
No, man, when you're an icon like he is, I mean, people are going to portray you in various aspects all over the place. I mean, every famous person has been portrayed by somebody somewhere, so no, I just have the dubious distinction of being the very first.
Hey, that's a good thing. Like in comics, the first issue, and always the first of anything is a good thing.
Spider-Man #1, MJ #1.
Spider-Man #1. This is MJ #1 right here. Boom. So go find the DVD if it's out there, and you'll have a #1 signature right here.
That's my guy.
Did you get to meet Michael and brothers and sisters?
I met the entire family. It used to always be like a big party at their Encino house. Always, it was, you know, it was always entertaining. You know.
So knowing them so well, were you kind of inside your head critiquing the performance in part 2, like, oh, you got this wrong, you did that right? Like,
no, because once again, art is an interpretive thing. Whoever interpreted his portrayal of Michael Jackson was his interpretation. Everybody's interpretation is personal to their experience. So,
did Michael ever talk to you about what you were doing? I mean, because if it was me, I'd be like, dude, you're not playing me right. Did you ever get to talk to him about that role?
We talked, but it wasn't ever like he said, you know, it's kind of weird that you're me. We were just being kids together. You know, it really wasn't about business when we were together. Kids were kids. You know, we were just kids, and they happened to be in a business that adults ran. So.
Bob Gale did say he was a big fan of the first film and happy to be involved in the sequel. So I guess, you know, all turned out pretty well for everybody there. So is anyone warming up to questions yet? Any fan guys? I don't want to hog the mic here. All right, we got a question up there.
Have you remember any lines from that? You did a little bit of Michael Jackson.
You want me to do Michael Jackson? What's that right here?
Dude, let me tell you something. Do you hear my voice?
At 12, it did not sound like that.
It wasn't like this in 1972, bro. Okay? I'll give you a hee-hee, and that's it.
That's great.
Good stuff, good stuff. All right, then I have another one for Harry. Harry, I understand that on Back to the Future 1, you were one of the only actors didn't have to shoot their scenes twice. Did you feel like you kind of lucked out, or were you like, man, I want to be here twice as long as everyone else?
No, in the business we call that a one-take wonder.
A one-take wonder.
You didn't work with Eric? You didn't do anything with Eric? No.
So, unless they want to continue to tell my story, I don't know. I was there, they don't have an interpretation. When we got to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, it was the first new thing they ever shot on the film because they had to reshoot everything because they had a different actor playing Marty. Those of you all know that. And so they reshot everything, so those guys got to like make double duty. Actually, probably only Donald.
Double money.
Double money. We were doing the same thing twice. So when they got to the Enchantment on the Sea dance, it was all new stuff. The crew was excited. The cast was amazing. The extras were like my favorite friends in the world. And the band, they were all, and they are, still real musicians. So when they finally finished the first day, third day, I think, they set up backstage behind this little bitty gymnasium on stage, and they put this thing on my hand. They gave me the phone. They said, action. I did the line that some of you might know. You know, that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this. Cut. And end of the day and send everybody home. One take.
Wow. That's because he's good.
Just like focus on the camera and do what you got to do. It's our work.
No, that's not true.
Be prepared.
No, Robert was the stickler. You must have done it perfect the first time because he would have said to you, let's do it again.
I did it perfect the first time.
See?
And it's all due to you all that it still runs all over the world in all different kinds of ways. So thank you.
And he got a gold record.
That's right, he's a gold recording artist.
He's the only one up here at this table with a gold record.
That is true.
I didn't get that part.
I think even the score on the sequel is making you shoot that scene again, though. Was that difficult 4 years later to kind of recreate that whole?
I had to lose 10 pounds. It's always the first thing. It's like, oh, look, life is going on. It's like, you're gonna play the role again. Oh, shies right. Gotta lose some weight. Okay, gotta do some running. Gotta do those sit-ups. And then we shot the second from different angles.
Right.
So it's 1989. So it's not CGI yet. So everything's computerized cameras. So it takes them 4 to 5 hours to set up a shot so that they can have him on stage and then the other mic will go across. So we were there a lot longer, doing a lot less, waiting for camera setup.
Yeah, and I can tell you on that story too, that camera was the first of its kind.
Yep.
Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were the first ones to have a camera that could actually shoot us separately when we weren't splitting the screen. The camera didn't work.
Yeah, it was
pretty
actually
incredible.
spliced
It did take
inside the
longer.
camera.
It took longer, but it was worth it.
The Vistaglide, Tondro was the name of the man who invented the program that ran it.
Correct.
While we were shooting the kitchen of McFly's in 2015, and the iced tea was being passed around the table, some of those days were 21, 24, 26-hour-long days. And Michael was doing the last season of Family Ties during the day, and we had him all night. And then, you know, around that, we're doing makeup and other shots, coverage. And I was like, Michael, when do you sleep? And he said, in the limo in between the studios. And he was...
I remember he said
He's had the same conversation with me too. Yeah.
Yeah, because he was doing between, what was the show? Was it?
He was doing
Family Ties.
He was doing Family
Yeah.
Ties. He was doing this, and then we shot 2 and 3 back.
And he would shoot at night. It was crazy.
Yeah. Wow. We had a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like. All right. Any fans? Anyone out there wanting for questions in the back? See a hand up there.
When you guys were going through the audition process, or you found out about the potential opportunity, did you have a grasp on what it could possibly be, the magnitude? Did you know because of who was involved, or did you think you were just going on another audition?
Who wants to start that one off?
I'm going to start that one off.
All right.
Because I got a good story for that. At that time, I had just started in business. I wasn't planning to be an actor. I was a musician. And I met a woman named Joanna Ray. She was the casting director. She got me hooked up. I went into this audition. I auditioned for this role probably 10 times because Zemeckis was trying to get the gang members correct. And I'll remember this specifically because about the 10th time I went in front of the camera, and I remember I had the flu, I wasn't feeling good, I did my thing, and then I looked into the camera and I said, hold your ears, kids. I said, Zemeckis, either hire me or leave me the fuck alone. No, I kid you not. And the casting director was like, I got in my car, I got 4 seconds out of the lot, and Robert Zemeckis called me. Oh my God. Get back. He said, get back here. I got back. I went back into, we were at Amblin at that time where we were doing all of our rehearsals on the back lot at Universal. And he said, okay, I heard you. Are you afraid of flying? I said, the only thing I'm afraid of is not getting this job. He goes, no, you got the job. Just, are you afraid? Because we had to be on the flying stuff. I said, no, I'm good. And that's how that came down.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I never did that again because then, as my people told me, don't do that shit anymore. It's like my Seinfeld role. I don't know if any of you know the hippie guy did on Seinfeld where I pulled a knife out. I went into that audition with a knife, not knowing any better. Pulled the knife out, and they were like, oh shit. And then I got the role, and they were like, just please don't bring any more weapons into because I would dive into, I didn't know any better. I wasn't schooled, I didn't go to class to do acting, I didn't know how it worked. So I went in being, oh, the guy's a hippie guy, pulls a knife, yeah, I'll do that. And I pulled out this big ass Bowie thing. But anyway, yeah, that's how that went. And it was cool. It's a cool story because I'm grateful for what we get to do. I think it's great that we all get to be in this incredibly cool franchise that just doesn't end. And that's the fun.
Well, bravo, that's awesome. Mine wasn't nothing like that.
They're not here to talk about it. They want to know.
Mine was nothing like that.
What was yours like?
It was really simple. It was kind of like a psychological thing because I didn't know what was going on. I knew it was Steven Spielberg, so in answer to your question, it was a Steven Spielberg project, so something was going to happen. Even if it sucked, it was going to be wonderfully sucky. So I had worked on a film called Scared Straight Another Story, and the people that cast that show cast Back to the Future, and they just set up a meeting with Ian Zemeckis, and we were at Amblin Entertainment, and we were in a room, and we're just sitting on the couch talking, and he was just talking to me, asking me stuff. He asked me if I could sing. Little did I know. I had no idea that he was, kind of auditioning me for Harry's role, but I had no idea. And then he asked some other questions, and he said, hey, cool, see you later. And like he said, it wasn't that long. It wasn't like a nail-biting situation. Like a day or so later, he called and said, you're going to be Goldie Wilson. We're going to send you some pages. And I'm like, I don't know what Goldie Wilson is, but I'm in.
So true. Yeah, I did Back to the Future too, so I didn't really see Back to the Future one. But I knew Michael J. Fox from Family Ties because I watched that show. And that's all I knew, that I was going to get to work with Michael J. Fox. I really didn't care about anybody else. I was like, and that, so yeah, I didn't know anything about the franchise at that point until I did my two.
It's interesting to hear. I've done a lot of cast reunions, and Claudia, and I think you before had mentioned that you didn't, at least a few people have said that they didn't think that film was going to be anything big, that the first one wasn't going to be anything big, and that totally surprised them. Leah, I think Leah was in on that conversation as well. For me, the casting was a completely bizarre, totally manipulative kind of situation in that I had actually been up for being playing Michael's mentor in a film called The Secret of My Success, and I didn't get cast because I was too tall. Michael's 5'6" or something, and so I was too tall.
Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah. And I had been, I co-starred with Clint Eastwood and worked on various other big projects, and was in between television and film work, playing Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin and Groucho Marx at Universal Studios on the tour. And an agent who handles mainly lookalikes called me up and said, wonder if you know who Crispin Glover is. And I said, of course I did. I did a film with him at AFI the year before he did the first Back to the Future film. Very quirky, eccentric actor who I liked a lot, even had his number. And he asked if I was the same height. And I said, no, Crispin's taller than me. He's heavier than me. And I said, wait a minute, what are they looking for? And I was told just a stand-in photo double for a film, and I knew the sequels to Back to the Future was in the works, and I said, is this for Back to the Future? And the agent said, I'm not at liberty to say. I was like, get me in there. So I went in and met the ADs, which is usually not how you go about casting. The ADs liked me, talked to Zemeckis about me, then I went to casting, and then read for them. And then I started getting called to prosthetic fittings at Ken Chase, the original makeup designer's place.
Ken Chase.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Ken.
Real quick, for those of you who don't know
made the
what an
Goldie
AD is, why don't you tell them what the AD is? 'Cause
The
we're talking film talk.
assistant director was who I met with. And Ken Chase, award-winning makeup designer, Wild Wild West, and a lot of great shows and movies. He is the one who actually told me that I had the role. It was very strange.
Was that what the AD did?
That Ken was the one who said, Ken said, Crispin's out, you're going to be playing George. I was like, what? And I couldn't fathom, how could they make this film without Crispin?
Yeah.
It just did not make sense. In my mind, they needed George here and there simultaneously, and I was going to be, doubling like Kevin did for Michael J. Fox. And I had done a screen test of the young George prosthetics, at which Zemeckis turned to Dean Cundy, our cinematographer, and said, so Dean, what do you think? And Dean said, I think we got Crispin without the trouble. And I was like, oops. What did I just hear? What is going on here? And of course, Universal is run by very smart attorneys and all, waited till the 11th hour to call my agent, said, we'd like to offer Jeffrey the role, and here we'll offer him minimum scale. And I was like, what? Come on. Anyway, so nonetheless, we worked out a contract, and I went to work the Monday morning not knowing what the heck I was stepping into. It was really giant shoes to fill, and I had to step up to the plate and in a very odd situation. They had to have Crispin, but they didn't have Crispin. And the makeup didn't necessarily make me look like Crispin unless I was far away or out of focus or skewed, but I had studied his screen tests in the previous film, and so I had his physicalizations, and all this wonderfully eccentric physicality that he had, and then the voice, getting all that stuff down, and I had actually called Crispin when I was up for it. I left him a message. I said, we worked together on this film at AFI with Daniel Hurley, and if you have any sway, I could use the work. My wife at the time was having our second kid, and I needed the health insurance. And he didn't call me back until he wanted to sue, until the third film came out. And, he told me sad stories of how he was mistreated on the first film. And, I had heard, while I was hanging upside down, I had a crew member come up to me and say, all this torture was meant for Crispin. I was like, oh, great, I'm such a lucky guy. And it was really hard. I was kept between sort of a rock and a hard place. They did not want me to promote myself. I couldn't get any photos from the production for at least 6 months after the third film came out. And a lot of mysterious things happened. It was very uncomfortable. And Crispin sued, but it never went to court. And they gave him $750,000. So he got paid, and he was supposed to be at this show. I don't know if you know this, but Crispin was going to screen one of his films here in this film festival, and I think when Ryan said, I'd like to mention your name and have your picture on the postcard, Crispin got cold feet and pulled it. But he had no problem being here with us, apparently, which is great.
Or that weird guy right there.
Little do you know that's Crispin. He is going to kill you. I know you. I see you, Crispin. You better watch your back, Jeff.
Harry, did you want to talk about your audition process at all? How you came on board in the series?
I don't know if it's been noticeable or not, but I really wanted Harry's role, okay?
I can tell you this, though. You're never going to look as good in that jacket as Harry. It's just not going to happen.
So I'm just an actor. That's what I do. It's what I love doing. I was doing a play at the time. They called some guys in to sing. A cappella.
Carry a tune.
I was doing a musical at the time called The Me Nobody Knows. It's a play about runaway teens that actually Jeffrey and his wonderful lady actually had met on many, many years ago. I wasn't in the same show. I came in, sang, they called 2 of us back for the callback. I sat and talked with Zemeckis for about 20 minutes about theater and about life and about just being in the human condition. And I went home and forgot about it.
Wow.
And then New Year's Eve, 1984, I get a phone call going, would you be interested in accepting a role for this movie? And I went, you have to talk to my agent, I guess? Because I didn't know. I'd never done a movie before.
That had to be New Year's Eve 1985.
Oh, excuse me.
No, yeah, because we finished principal photography with Eric at the end of the 84, and everybody shot everything over at the beginning of 85.
Right, so I got hired for that role, because I remember I was sitting there with I was an unemployed actor, and I had a altar of fruit. That is what I could afford.
They gave you a fruit. You got a fruit basket?
No. This was the only food I had. Was an altar of fruit.
I didn't get a fruit
serious
basket.
as a heart attack.
I got a fruit basket.
Yeah, but you didn't get Harry's role.
But I never saw the whole script. I only saw the scenes in the prom. So that's all I knew the movie was about. I didn't know anything about a DeLorean. I didn't know anything about time travel. I knew that I got to do this thing, and they were going to play Earth Angel. And then Alan Silvestri asked me one day in rehearsal. He said, "Well, you want to sing it?" And I went, "Well, I figured you're going to hire somebody from some group with the Four Tops or Temptations or somebody to sing this." went into the studio after the shooting. We did 14 takes. And that, I once again walked away and went, okay, that's cool. Got invited to a screening, and there's, what the fuck? Oh my God! That's amazing! And then the orchestra came in at the end of the song. It was like, who did that? And people are cheering and applauding. So, and
30 years later, they're still cheering and applauding for this amazing role.
Exactly. Oh, and did I mention you got a gold record?
Well, they put it on the album. He said, well, would you mind? Yeah, they're always like asking my permission. Do you mind if we put it on the album? Okay. Power of Love went gold, and so I'm at this ceremony with Huey Lewis and the News and Etta James getting a gold record. And as I told Donald the other day, I got 1/12 of 1 cent for this album. Oh, per copy, but that was 1985. So the albums cost a lot. Remember albums?
Yeah.
I know. And cassettes. Yes, cassettes that you turn with a pencil.
That you could never fast forward to the right damn song, man.
All right, so come on, you guys. I mean, I know what's going on in your brains out there. Let's ask some questions.
One thing, let me hear Mayor. Come on, we want to hear.
Never gets asked this, never.
Because nobody can say it like you.
Mayor!
Oh, no, listen. No, stay tuned, because he says it again in a whole different way in my film.
It's true, you guys better say.
Very cool. It's very cool indeed.
There was one other question.
Young lady?
No.
You? Yeah.
So how different was Eric's performance with Mike?
Oh, yeah.
You're like the one. You're the link.
Like I tell everybody, Eric Stoltz is a badass actor.
Badass actor.
He is a great dramatic actor.
Yeah.
Back to the Future is not a dramatic film. It's as simple as that. Michael J. Fox brought comedic timing. If you look at like all of the old great comedians, the Laurel and Hardys, the Harold Lloyd, they all had this physical capability that made their comedy endearing. And that's what Michael J. Fox was. Because if you looked at him in the film, everything he did, his physical comedy, he was falling down, he'd do all kinds of crazy stuff, but it was perfect for what that film needed. And Eric Stoltz just didn't have that. Taking nothing away from him as a performer, he just didn't have what it needed for Back to the Future at that time. And I think Universal spent something like $9 or $10 million before they realized that.
And Michael's one of the first actors I've ever seen call cut on a scene. He called cut. We were doing a take, and he said cut. I didn't even believe that myself.
What scene was it?
I don't remember specifically what it was, but he knew that it wasn't working. And you know, it's amazing. When describing, because I teach acting, and when describing the different techniques of some of the great actors I've worked with, Michael developed a sort of a sixth eye out there that's watching the truth in his comedy. And like you say, it's a muscle that you develop over the years, all the sitcom work he's done. He knows the timing and how to make it right. And Zemeckis was brilliant in that, and this is a sign of a great director, is you hire talent that knows their craft, and just sit back and solve problems. One of the hardest days we had, a 26-hour day, if you remember where Lorraine goes over to the window and lifts the shade and there's a brick wall, it's generally scenic stuff. We couldn't get that effect to work without you seeing the flicker of the slide projector. We spent literally 6 hours alone on getting that effect correct. And we went to, I remember, second dinner at 3 in the morning and came back, and afterwards Zemeckis said, well, Leah, why don't you just turn to the camera, say your line, and while pulling the shade out, that'll give us time to switch it off and cover the and it worked, and we finally got to go home.
You guys have no idea how long they will spend on 10 seconds of film.
Unbelievable.
So in timing, like, how excruciating was it to be hanging upside down for
Days, months.
They for 2 weeks. And what do you see me? 30 seconds in it. They didn't want to get me down from that thing. The railing went from outside the front door all the way through the kitchen, they built a ladder and put a board on it and would say, do a sit-up, you know, and I'd sit up and they'd run it underneath me and I'd lie back while everyone would go off and get coffee and I'd be alone on the set twiddling my thumbs. They didn't want to get me down from it because it was a real rigmarole to do so. I have a couple rare shots, you know, if you come by the table tomorrow, of me finally down. You see my, instead of standing, my hang-in. Some really rare behind-the-scenes shots that really were new to me as of last year. And I was like, where did, let me get this, you know, and so I brought them to this show. I said, come take a look, they're really cool. And it was hard work, you know, but it was also thrilling. I did have one terrible moment on set. We did a special effect when the pizza came out in 15 seconds. I actually was put into a special effect into a body cast, and the costume put over that. Out of the body cast through the back was a pipe that went through the set with a wheel on it. And Lorraine says, George, rotate your axis for dinner. I go, okay, 4, and spin. And it wasn't used, it's in the bonus material called pizza. And I had been spun upside down before taking a breath. And when you're put into a body cast, you're really cinched in. And I have claustrophobia already. And I was spun upside down, didn't have a breath, and I could not breathe. I could not get any oxygen in my lungs. And Zemeckis had called action, and I started flailing, trying to get this closed. You know, if anyone has claustrophobia out there, you know, the first thing you do is start ripping your clothes off. And I was ripping the costume off, trying to get me, and I was like, cut, Jeffrey, what's spin up? And I was able to catch my breath, and it actually took me 5 minutes to recuperate and get back in the damn thing. And when you're holding up production that is, what was it, $50,000 a minute? I don't know what this production cost, and you're holding it up, it's, you know, you feel the pressure. It's like,
Yeah, anytime you're hanging from any sort of apparatus, it's, you know, you're in a sling that goes from your crotch to whatever. Like when we were doing the hoverboard stuff, same thing. We were on those wires for hours, and then, you know, they would finally let us down. It's like you can't even walk, let alone try and do your stuff, because it's just so uncomfortable. And the hoverboards, they moved, you know, our feet were free, and we had to go learn how to ride those, and we did actually ride them because our feet were free, and we had to learn how to make these turns and come back like a skateboarder. But yeah, I totally sympathize with you on that.
That was so cool to be on that set. I wasn't in those scenes, but I came down and watched you guys shoot, and it was so fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I had a great time. It was something.
That's amazing.
You know, we went for 2 weeks before. We went for 2 weeks before shooting. To go up to the gentleman who was working the wiring. He had a ranch, and we went up. Darlene, Jason, and I went up for 2 weeks prior to shooting to learn how to do. Because they were trying to get the wires right where they were thin enough that you didn't see them, but they didn't break. So we would test them, and then a wire would break, and we'd be hanging like this and falling, and the dirt road was going like. But yeah, so they finally got it right, and when I saw the finished product, I was like, wow. I see you back there.
Quick question. When you guys were filming that scene, the flying scene, I believe the female actually hits like the side of the clock tower before she crashes through the window. Is that done on purpose or just by accident?
No.
That story.
Well, you know what? Okay.
It's something I've always caught, like within the film, it's like a split second. She kind of hits one of the posts and then.
Well, you know what? Here's the deal. It was 30 plus years ago. We weren't really supposed to talk about any of that stuff at that time. I was on the set at that time, and I'm still really good friends with Cheryl Wheeler, who was the stunt woman for Spike, Darlene Vogel, who's one of my good friends, and she's also in the short you're going to see. That was kind of a tricky day because my stunt guy, Gary Morgan, who had also done Cujo and a bunch of great stuff, he's an amazing guy. They had concerns. They had concerns about the candy glass. When we came through, we were supposed to bust through the clock tower and the glass. That's called candy glass. You break through it, it breaks like candy. Once the guys get through there, then they have a cable that they blow the stunt guys. They'll release them so when they fly up, they release them from the harness. They drop inside the building onto the mats. There was a concern from the stunt guys that, well, how are you going to know we're all inside? And that's kind of exactly what happened. Griff's stunt guy, as he's coming across the pond, somehow he got turned upside down. When he hit the stairs, it knocked Cheryl into the post, right? Which knocked the 2 guys through the window and they blew the cable. Cheryl was still outside. So she fell
on her face, yeah.
2 stories down. And I'll remember this to my day. I walked up, I said, Cheryl, messed up pretty good. And she's like, did we get the shot? And I went, that's a freaking professional. And I'm still friends with her. We've been friends for a long time. And she went through a lot of different surgeries. But Zemeckis and everybody was great. You know, Universal was great about, you know, kind of being there. We stopped shooting for a couple of days to really suss out what happened. And you know, it's just what happens in the business. Stunts are dangerous. That's why I'm an advocate right now that stunts should be an Academy Award thing. You know, there's the one people we don't give any props to, the stunt guys, and they do a lot of the work. You know, and it's a shame. So if they ask you, tell them, give them a category. Yeah. Best stunt actor. It's the way it should be. But that's how that story went down. And that's exactly how the whole thing went down. So it was unfortunate, but it happens in our business. It's just the way it is.
Just to make it a little lighter, I spent a lot of time in the dressing room with these incredibly large shrimp that they kept having with the cocktail sauce. So just to let you know, there was another side to the whole experience.
No, we had burgers right after that. We had barbecue right after, you know, they put her in the ambulance, they took her away, and it's like, all right, let's break for lunch.
It wasn't Bloodbath to the Future.
Yeah, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a bloody thing. It was just an unfortunate accident.
It's a horror show. It's all right to call it Bloodbath to the Future.
Right, yeah, Bloodbath to the Future. But it's just what happens in our business. We, you know, even as actors, we try to do as much as we possibly can, and it's just part of the business. You know, you can slip in the shower, same thing. Okay, not being filmed, but.
Any other questions out there? Anybody got a question?
We got one.
Oh, we got one up here.
Do you get any royalties on the DVDs that are still sold?
We can't talk about that.
We actually got 0 for the re-release, the theatrical re-release for the 30th anniversary. We didn't get anything. We weren't.
You didn't get nothing?
You got nothing?
I did.
Boy, you really pissed them off on that delay in the stuff.
Oh
huh?
man! For DVDs and cable and such.
Maybe I should just
TV,
be quiet.
There's the way residuals work. There's a big pie. Half that pie goes to Chris, Leah, and Michael, and the rest of that pie is tiny little pieces, and it's gone down over the years, but we still get a little bit.
They had pie?
Right next to the barbecue.
I didn't.
How often do you guys watch the movies?
Every day.
Turn on the TV. It's on a channel every day somewhere.
Do you just have like this ritual thing maybe once a year you just sit down and just watch them?
Yeah. Well, you know, that depends because I have 2 kids that are right at that age, and it's like it's really cool that even now, 30 years later, there's a whole new generation that's getting familiar with this film. It's like it never goes away. Wow. So now there's these new kids. So my son is 11, and of course now I'm watching it again with him. So it does. You keep going.
And when the Blu-ray came out, what, 7 years ago or whatever?
7, yeah.
It was like watching a new movie. I mean, the crispness and the clarity was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
I signed a few of those Blu-rays. The guy came with those really cool Blu-rays. It was very cool to see.
I don't have a Blu-ray. My mother, who is 85 though, will call me every time it's on.
Yes.
That's right.
That's the best thing ever.
Speaking of parents and kids, there is one thing I do want to do before we run out of time. I see 2 of like the most adorable Back to the Future fans up in the front row.
Yeah, man.
Me and Doc want to come give everybody a high five on stage.
Come on, man.
You guys want to come on?
Come on, they did it.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Look at these guys. Give these kids
Listen. These cool, incredible kids have got a website. You got to follow them.
Yes, come on. It's almost got bad. It's almost like
We'll follow
these guys.
Yeah.
Yes. You're part of the game.
The next generation of Back to the Future.
I'm going to show you guys something really cute. All right, Mom? Say something so they can tell you every night, you know.
If we're in the grocery store and I need milk, go around the corner.
Around the corner, Kevin, you're the guy who just say no.
And when I'm driving, He's an idiot.
His parents in it. It comes from upbringing.
This is what I'm talking about. This is a generation that this film is going to just, and that's, I think that's what we all feel so blessed about.
Yeah.
This is we're part of something so iconic. It's just, I can't even believe it sometimes, honestly.
And it's still being last week I was watching Family Guy. And I think that my scene is parodying at least 3 different kinds of ways on there.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's a Black to the Future. All I'm saying, we get no residuals for that, but at least it's a part of the culture.
You don't?
Jealousy's deep.
See, Donald's making all the money, and he didn't get the role he wanted.
I think it worked out.
I can't see anybody else being Mayor Goldie except this guy next to me.
And nobody else could be Data, and nobody else could be Marvin Berry, and nobody else could be George in a crunch.
And majorly, the thing that's most wonderful about this is that it's you all out there that makes
It's
it the
because
most
of
wonderful
you guys.
thing for 35 friggin' years that we still get accolades. There was the couple that was here earlier today. Was that today?
Yeah.
And Donald put on Earth Angel, and it was the song that they were married to. This version, and so I got to sing to them, and they almost cried. That's all I gotta say. It still works. The movie still works for so many people.
I cried.
So we're very happy to be involved in something that means so much to so many people, yourselves included. So I think all of us from the bottom of our hearts thank you guys so very much.
And this show, just to give you a little history of how we got here, in 2008 we did the first Back to the Future cast reunion in Hollywood. And I had been contacted by a guy named Ryan Scott Weber, who had planned to come to the show. He was totally excited about being there. And just a few days before the show, he contacted me and said, Jeff, I can't come. My best friend's been in a car wreck and he's probably going to die. And he did die. And I stayed in touch with Ryan. I got a film poster. I got all the actors who were at that reunion to sign it and shipped it to Ryan. And we've been, buddies ever since. And he said, I love the film so much. I want you guys to be at my first HorrorCon. And that's why we're here.
So yeah, you got a sci-fi movie at the HorrorCon thanks to Ryan Scott Weber.
All right, guys, so I think we're just about out of time. Let's give one last round of applause for everybody here on the stage.